Right, let's pick up on our top story, the Constitutional Court dismissing the IEC's application for a postponement of the local government elections. The Apex Court has directed the IEC to conduct a voter registration weekend. The Constitutional Court also ordering Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma to determine a date for local elections between the 27th of October and the 1st of November. So I'm joined now by Michael Beaumont of Action SA. Good evening, Mr. Beaumont. What's your party's response to the news that the poll has to go ahead this year?
Good evening, Sally. We're very, very pleased with what has emerged from the Constitutional Court, because what the Constitutional Court has essentially done is affirm that regular elections are necessary for a successful democracy, but at the same time taking into cognizance the importance of voter registration. In a country like South Africa, we have 1 million people who turn 18 every year, and to have an election without a voter registration opportunity would have been a major problem. And I think that the IEC has managed to combine those two, the Constitutional Court rather, has managed to combine those two imperatives. It's fantastic.
Just explain to me about the voter registration weekend, because as I read the order, it says if the IEC can do a voter registration week, they can, but if the Commission determines it's not practically possible, then basically they still have to go ahead anyway, or just open it up the whole time. Explain what is your understanding of this.
It appears what the Concourt has done, Sally, is indicate that if a registration weekend cannot take place in the traditional format that South Africans are accustomed to, then the IEC would be required to open up municipal offices to have people come into their offices and register on site, so that voter registration would remain something that has to take place either way.
One of the concerns is that the campaigning period is now curtailed, that it's going to be really difficult, particularly for smaller parties, to get their message across. As a new party, as a smaller party, is this something that concerns you? Do you think it was a valid issue that was raised by the IEC?
Look, I think first things first, Action SA is a new party, it's certainly not a small party. I think the reality is that all around the world, Sally, organizations and businesses and families are all having to adapt to the new environment in which this pandemic has placed us. And the truth is that political parties are no different. We need to make those adaptations. And I think the reality is that the changes that have been made are such that elections are taking place around the continent and around the world, and political parties are having to adjust. And I'm very confident in our ability to make that adjustment in South Africa.
So gatherings are still restricted. We're still under the DMA, the Disaster Management Act. What now for Action SA in terms of campaigning? How difficult is it going to be to drum up support as you go into this election period on full speed, I imagine?
Well, we've been running at full speed for quite some time, Sally. So this announcement doesn't take place in an environment where we've been asleep. We have announced our mayoral candidates in all of our municipalities, and the last one will be announced on Monday. We've been operating a campaign for a number of months now. Our candidates are on the ground. We ran primaries that had communities electing our candidates at the end of June in a first-of-its-kind system. And the reality is we've been campaigning all along. I think if anything now, Action SA is going to ramp up its campaigning, and it will ensure that we will take our message to every corner of the municipalities that we are contesting.
How do you do that safely?
Well, if the adjustment is that instead of having one large rally on a given day of 20,000 people or so, which would have been the practice in the past, and rather that you need to have 100 rallies of 20 people, then that's exactly what we're going to have to do. But the point is that we need to engage with as many people as possible and share our message, and we need to alter the way in which we do things.
Have you picked up from any of the people that you've spoken to, potential voters, that they might be concerned about turning out at the polls? Because this was another worry, that people would feel a little unsafe because of COVID-19 and might not actually turn up at the polls on voting day.
Absolutely, we are picking that up, and the research we're doing is indicating that as much as a third of South Africans are saying that they're not sure that they will vote, which is very troubling at this point in time, being so close to an election day. Action SA has been critical of the IEC on this for a very long time, because in the report by Justice Moseneke, there was a public opinion poll that indicates that over 40% of people wanted these elections moved. And the reason they wanted them moved, we feel, is that the IEC has been underwhelming in its leadership in showing the South African people how they're going to run these elections and how they can guarantee their ability to cast their vote, not just freely and fairly, but also safely. Because at the end of the day, the confidence to turn out is directly proportional to what measures the IEC is putting in place to communicate to the South African people.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time this evening. That is Michael Beaumont of Action SA.